So being drawing one, I'll tell you right now, the older you get, the more you get into art, the more you become addicted to it. And everything you see and everything you look at, you'll be like, there's art in everything that we do. Every color, every shirt, the shoes you wear, the clothes you wear, where you live, everything is art. My goal when I started doing art was to not throw anything away. And now all my friends and all my coworkers know that I don't want to throw anything away. If they want to throw it away, they're like, here, can you do something with this? I'm like, heck yeah, I can do something with this, thanks. But I do a lot of upcycling, like he said, with clothing, furniture.
I thought it would be fun for her to be able to just come in and talk to you guys. And I'm going to build some kind of a project out of this. So once I hear her talk, I'll formulate some kind of assignment for you. Just write little notes. You can grab scrap paper if you don't have any in front of you. But I want to see everybody with a pencil, pen, and a piece of paper in front of them.
So I am a repurposer upcycler. I don't work with one media, so I like to call it eclectic artistry. Anything I can find, I try to use. Anything somebody throw away, I try to use. When I first started upcycling, I started doing jewelry. So anything that I could find, broken necklaces, beads. My grandma always had the weird, gaudiest earrings from the 80s and 90s. You always find that weird, cool bag of maybe jewelry in the bottom of your mom's jewelry box that's broke. Anything, a broken brooch, a broken watch, a broken earring, was going to be made into something. You see a pop lid right there. I reuse that from a pop can with broken jewelry. The right hand picture is a brooch that was broke that I remounted and used for a charm. And the bottom part is a broken watch face. I took all the guts from the inside of it. You can put a picture into it, and then it's another charm necklace. I like to try to use anything instead of sending it to the landfill. You know, why not? I also do silverware into like little necklaces and charms of broken jewelry as well. So you had that one really cool earring, it broke. You have another earring, what am I gonna do with it? Oh, I could glue it to something, make something else with it. It's pretty cool. Another great thing about upcycling is it helps you keep memories. I run a small business, Antium's Attic. My main motto is keeping memories alive. This right here was my grandmother's wedding dress. We wanted to do something with it. It was getting tattered and torn and old because she got married in the early 1940s. I have 2 daughters, so I decided for Christmas last year to make ornaments out of them for my mom and my 2 daughters as a memory of their great grandma and my mom's mom, obviously. So I used styrofoam balls, took the most prettiest parts of the dresses and made the ornaments. Also up here I have some flannels that I've made. Like if you have that really awesome t-shirt as a kid, you just can't get rid of it because that's my favorite t-shirt. Well, now you can take the image off the t-shirt, sew it to the back of your favorite flannel, and you can wear that shirt for years to come. Also, I make purses out of them as well. Use belts as the straps. Use sheets or tablecloths as the liner. So then you have your same t-shirt there. Jeans, I'll make into aprons with just loose fabric that I have left over. You can also do purses or anything your heart's desired. Pillows, stuffed animals. Upcycling is not just clothing, it's also outdoor decorations, indoor decorations. The top left, the dog, the ears are made with spoons. The tongue and eyeballs is made with spoons. The feet are made with recycled food cans. And the body itself is an actual vintage metal ironing board from like the 1960s. There, the bottom one is a cookie sheet. I'm sure you all have those really nasty cookie sheets that you just put foil over and you still keep using them. Well, I got to the point where I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So I spray painted the top, used chalkboard paint on the bottom, and now I have a memo system to hang in your kitchen. The other items are fan blades from ceiling fans. I made chalkboards, welcome signs you can hang on your door, you can hang in your kitchen, write little notes on. I had some little ice skates that didn't fit anybody else in the house. So I mounted them onto a piece of wood, did a little paper image, found some really cool vintage bibbles and baubles, I call them, in the house, and cool buttons that made a flower arrangement. Also that bottom one that looks like a reindeer, he is actually a trowel that I repainted to look like a reindeer for Christmas. And then my daughter's in band, so she's graduating this year. So I took all 4 of her music shows and I did musical notes with the school colors, framed them and gave them to her for Christmas. And That's all 4 of her shows that she did while she was here. That is also a recycled design. It is beaters, hand mixer beaters. I cut them down and they now make little pumpkins for the fall. I never, ever, ever buy new fabric. If you ever sew, if you ever make anything with fabric, fabric is really, really expensive. I am not gonna do that. I will go to the thrift store and I will find, my favorite is to find vintage curtains. The heavier, the velvety, the cooler, the more embossed, the cooler they are to make something with. So the right-hand picture, we always do a family Halloween. This was the last one we did. We did the Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus. So our costumes are actually made from tablecloths, vintage curtains, and a bed duvet, which are those blankets that kind of cover over your quilt. And I sewed them into fabric there. The middle picture was for when Washington used to have their international days where the elementary schools would get together and he would celebrate different countries. Those outfits are made with tablecloths, towels, and those dust covers that go on the bottom of the bed is how I made their skirts. And that top skirt is made from an old vintage hand embroidered tablecloth. This one is my absolute favorite. I just got this done and I got it sold. The right hand or the left hand side was a huge wall clock, probably stood about this tall. It had a big, huge wooden base piece on it, so obviously it had to hang on the wall. I was like, that's not gonna work. So I busted it off, took all the guts out of it, repainted it, put shelves in it, and now it becomes a curio cabinet. Stood about this tall once it was all done. It's kind of cool. An old sewing machine cabinet made into a bar cart or party cart. It's a sink. Where the sink was where the sewing machine would have gone. It folds up and it's on wheels. So you can put ice and drinks in the sink, it'll drain down to the ground. And you still have cold drinks with no, water float in there. It's kind of cool. Now the bottom part, a couple stories about this one. I needed cabinets for my living room. Couldn't find the right size and right width that I wanted. I didn't like anything that I could afford. So I'm like, I've got all of these windows that I had gotten out of old barns. What can I do with them? So I took old barn wood to make the shelves and the outer boxes and put together windows to make those cabinets in my living room. The other story is that there is a window right up here at the top that says Shell. And there's a little sticker on it. It's an advertisement for windshield wipers. I am huge. I love vintage cars. So I was like, oh, that's a really cool window. I wonder what I could do with that. So I bought it. My whole living room now is based over that one window with all the antique car pictures that I took at different car shows and things like that. Here's some more upcycled furniture. The left-hand side is another sewing machine cabinet with a farm window, and that mirror was broken, so I wound up covering it up with flowers. So that's what's cool about recycling. You could always figure out what to use to cover up a blemish or a mistake or something broken to make it new again. The right-hand top picture was an old window from our house. Those are always cool to use for picture frames. That, of course, has car stuff, so of course that's in my living room again. And then the bottom one, the box, we had a really weird window that came into our house that came in a carrying box when we replaced our windows. Like, what the heck am I gonna do with this? It's a big, heavy-duty wooden, what the heck? So I repainted it, put wooden legs on it, took an old kitchen curtain, and that's what made the cushion on top. There was an old curtain. Okay, so back in the day, in like 1970s, spoon rings were really popular. I guess they're becoming popular again, from my understanding. So what they usually use is the top part of the silverware, curl it around to custom fit the size of your finger. So sky's the limit with silverware design. Well, I had leftovers from it, like the knife ends and the fork ends, and after using the spoons for different stuff, I'm like, what am I gonna do with these ends? So I decided to make crosses out of them. To hold the crosses together, I used different pieces of broken jewelry to hold that middle section together of the cross. Everybody knows that there's somebody in their family that loves sports. And you have all these sports balls that you don't use anymore once they become decommissioned from practice. So I had a ton of softballs and baseballs. I'm like, what the heck am I gonna do with these? Cartoon characters. So I got out the old trusty button box and paint and whatnot and made some cartoon characters with them. I sell them with a little story and a name, so they all have their own little character to go with them. Along with those, I also do golf balls. And of course, I've never gotten to do it yet, but a football. We can always figure out something to do with football. And then at the bottom, the Wizard of Oz and the pig are made from burnt out light bulbs. Hate to throw those away, we gotta do something with them. Oh, I can paint them into characters. And then the middle section, when my kids were little, as we all know, you lose pieces to games. Well, they lost half the pieces in the Monopoly game. Can't play anymore, what are we gonna do with it? So I went and made a tote bag out of it. I got the plastic vinyl that you use to cover tablecloths with, and the piping is actually from an aquarium, from the filter system to use for the handles. Okay, this was a special order. The lady had lost her husband, and they loved Harley Davidson. She couldn't figure out what to do. And I'm like, oh, for your 2 kids for Christmas, let's take his jeans. I went to the Harley shop and got some lapels, or the little emblems. That's his belt, and then we got the chain and we made some Christmas stockings for the kids. Okay, this was another special order I did. An older lady, she's probably in her 70s. She had her great-grandmother's silverware. She has several daughters, several daughter-in-laws, several granddaughters. And she's like, I want to do something with this, but I don't know what, and I saw your work, what can we do? So she decided to buy the Tree of Life charms and the necklaces. And I made these out of the bottoms of the silverware spoons. Then what she wound up doing was getting a picture of the lady that owned them, and also a story about her life, and a family tree from where the lady belonged to where all these people that were getting the gifts belonged. And that was the gift that she gave the family girls for memory at Christmas time. Okay, that's me, back when Source and Trooper taught me, back in the day. And that's my Instagram account. I brought some samples of things that I also do here. I know my mom doesn't have it, but my grandma always had the cool button box with the really vintage antique buttons that usually comes in a cookie can. What are you gonna do with them? You don't want them sitting there. You can make flowers out of them now. These are really popular, using like floral wire, and then just put them in something in an arrangement. This necklace right here is made from 2 different necklaces and then a broken button. This was a mantle clock made into a jewelry box. And then this one is also a mantle clock made into a jewelry box in the back. And then another big thing that I do is memory lanterns. Usually I use an actual lantern, but this clock was kind of cool and I had to do it. And it has a little poem about always keep a seat open for me. I'll always be there for someone who passed away during the holidays. So I put a little chair inside with a candle and then the little poem. And it's really cool also to use bottles, and it kind of really cool bottles to upcycle for vases. Paint them, put an image on them, make fake flower arrangements, or even for real flowers. And I always have these nasty pots that you throw away, but you have the lid, and I don't want to throw away the lid, so what I'm going to do with them? You can make really cool cartoon characters with lids. So, I mean, you could do something like this, or if you're really creative, do some eyeballs, nose, mouth, the whole 9 yards, make some goofy characters out of your pot lids. Then hang them on your wall for decor. Because I have a booth at Good Living Market in downtown Warsaw, which is over by the post office. I had several of these. A lady saw it and she goes, oh, I want it. But I'm gonna gut the guts out of it. So what are you gonna do with it? She put her modem in for her Wi-Fi in the house and then hung it up on the wall. So you couldn't see your ugly Wi-Fi connection in the house, but it was still there in a box, which is kind of a cool idea. Another one is I'll take the little tiny spoons and do some charms and necklaces. Grandpa always eats those Altoids, those nasty stinky mints that come in the tins. Repurpose it into a sewing kit. Oh, and one last thing. Remember those little plastic toys you would play with as a kid? Oh, I love these little plastic toys, little characters, you know, for you get Happy Meals or whatever. You don't want to get rid of them? You can now make them into keychains. So you can always keep that memory of your childhood alive with whatever you got. I also do a lot of plaster craft, which is like powder plaster that you would pour into a mold and then you could paint. So like things like this. It's actually like it's called greenware plaster. The way I get my molds, I don't want to spend a fortune on them at different places. So I go to thrift stores, chocolate molds. You make chocolate candies with? Sky's the limit. They have all kinds of holidays and everything, and people will send these to thrift stores, 25 cents, compared to like $5 or $10 or whatever if you'd buy them online. Another thing that I use to mold are like the silicone molds. You would just pour your plaster in there or pour your liquid in there, tap it out so you see all the bubbles come up. Once it's dry, push it, pop it out, and you've got the little thing to paint. So that's another way to use a craft thingy to make your craft. Which is kind of cool. Okay, one more thing. Records are popular these days. So I did melt records into bowls. Now I recommend if you were going to do this, you want to take a choice? Make sure if you're going to upcycle anything that's vintage or antique, make sure, you guys can take 2 apiece if you want, but don't tell the other classes. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Home Sweet Home that used to be downtown. It's like by the viaduct by the post office. It's a 2-story red brick building. It's now open. It's called Good Living Market. Inside there's several craft vendors and art vendors, vintage clothing. The guy that owns it makes custom furniture, custom birdhouses. But it's a really cool place. I have a booth there. I have a best friend that has a booth there that also does repurposing and vintage items as well. They do classes of different things there. You can fan them on Facebook or Instagram. I think they're just on Facebook, but it's Good Living Market. They also, in the summertime, they have a thing called Vintage Market, where they open up their backyard. And if you have stuff you want to sell, it's $35 for the weekend. Go set up your tables and an awning, and you could sell to your heart's content. So it's kind of a cool artisan outreach there. Yeah.
So do you people make requests? Like, could you give them, we give you a theme for our flannel and then you...
Yeah. Yep. And that's usually how I do a lot of them. Because Mr. Schwarzentrooper asked me earlier, how do I determine the sizes of what I make? The flannels are used as well. I buy them from thrift stores. So I try to get a gamut of different sizes and different colors. But I also do research online to like, what are the most popular sizes that people buy? And then I look for those sizes when I buy them. Yeah, right there.
Do you look for specific shapes and things when you're trying to make it?
I don't. What my problem is when I see something, I go, ooh, I bet you I could do something with it. So I'll just take it, and it may sit in my studio for a couple weeks or a couple months, and then I'll be like, oh, I know what I can finally do with this. This piece will go with this piece. I mean, there is certain pieces that I am kind of like drawn to. Like I like industrial. I like the older, the more worn look, things like that to the items. The more worn they are, the better I like them. The more damaged they are, the more I like them. So yeah, good question though. What was your question? It's been a long process. You start off with not having a lot of money for things, but you want to make stuff. You know, art's always there. Once you have art, I don't think it ever gets out of your system. And the older you get, the worse it gets, because you just see something, you're like, oh, I can make something with that, or oh, I could, whatever. So it was just a slow snowball of like, oh, this is cute. And then I will admit, I do kind of cheat. I do look at what other people make, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and then go, ooh, that's a cool idea. I think I can make my own twist on that one. And then see what I have in my stockpile of stuff to see what I can do. But sometimes, like this clock, I'll just look at it and go, oh, that looks like Alice in Wonderland. That's what I'll make it out of. So it just kind of started that way.
So is everything like normally just recycled and everything?
Some of the stuff, like when I do jewelry to sell, because I do craft shows, like the earring posts and stuff, I will buy new, because who wants to use somebody else's earrings? But everything else is usually upcycled from something else. By not having a lot of money, except for glue and paint. And then finding stuff around the house, because even like, I've seen some really cool upcycle artists that take the 2-liter bottles, melt them with plastic and make flowers and paint them really cool. I've seen them take pop cans and cut them to make like windmills for the summertime that spin out in your yard. I mean, it's just using the resources that you have. Recycle to me is maybe just taking something like cardboard and recycling into paper. If you're going to do that into the blender with the water and whatever to make paper. So that's kind of the recycle to me. The upcycle is taking the item and just changing it to something new. And then I had a friend that does a lot of industrial cleanouts. So she'd call me, and the second thing I think was one of those sewing machine cabinet desks that I did. Because I had this big sewing machine. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? So the sewing machine's still sitting there. I think I might make a lamp out of that one. But the cabinet wound up being made into a desk. Yeah.
When you're in like a thrift store, what usually catches your eye?
I love steampunk. The rustier, the chippier, the better for me. So like the older, the more vintage is usually what catches my eye the most. But also it's just, I don't know, mine is just a thing where I look at it and I'm like, oh, I could do something with that. You know, and my favorite thrift stores, we were talking about it earlier, I don't like the big, huge commercial thrift stores like Goodwill. No. Church thrift stores are the best thrift stores to go to because they always have the coolest, neatest stuff that people donate. You know, grandma had a box of stuff from her cabinet, she's gonna donate it. I want grandma's stuff, not yesterday's stuff. You know, because that's the cooler stuff that's more well built. So I usually try to stick with thrift stores from churches and vintage thrift stores, things like that.
You go to St. Anne's
St. Anne's garage sale?
garage sale.
Oh, 100% St.
It's
Anne's
huge,
garage sale. Yeah, another place I love, if you guys are ever out towards Rochester, there's a place called Community U Thrift Store. All their stuff gets donated. And then the stuff that you purchase has a name on the ticket. So it could be like Fulton County Humane Society. It could be the Boys and Girls Club. So whatever item you buy, that money goes directly to that charity, which is really kind of cool. So it's Community U. There's also a really cool thrift store I love in North Manchester called, I think it's like 3 Missions Church or 3 Missions Thrift Store. And their stuff goes directly back into their baby program and their church programs for 3 different churches. We did I was telling Mr. Storage Trooper, we did a trip. One spring break, my girls and my mom, we went to Cleveland, Ohio. I pinpointed every single church thrift store from Warsaw to Cleveland, Ohio, and back again. And we stopped at every single one, and it was the best trip.
You're working with furniture, clothing, jewelry. Do you have a preference of these, or is it more or less?
I don't.
Yeah, based on
It's whatever hits me when I see it. And I had a really bad addiction there for a while to Metzger's auction online. Because I have a bad habit of, ooh, I could do something with that. Ooh, I could do something with that. And I'd be like scrolling, looking at everything that's going up for auction, up for sale. In fact, I was telling the teachers at lunch that everybody that I work with knows that I upcycle. So they will go through their junk drawer at home or the boxes of junk, bring me bags and boxes of stuff. Here, I know you can use this, take this. So 9 times out of 10, I'm just buying glue or paint to make something out of it, which is kind of cool.
So what does your storage look like for all these things?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Thank goodness we have like an extra property attached to ours, which my husband gets his man cave and I get my she shed, which are 2 outside buildings, but the rafters, the ceiling, part of the other storage shed. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Yeah.
You've got no shortage of things to work with.
Oh, no, never. Never. When you upcycle, there isn't a shortage anyway, is there?
That's true.
Yeah.
Do you have like a bunch of like half-finished projects?
I do.
Yeah.
Horribly.
How do you keep track of it?
I don't. What happens is, because my she shed's just a whole cluster of everything, so I get tired of something and I put it in a box, and the box goes away, like in the closet. And then I'm like, oh, this closet's driving me nuts, I gotta clean it out. So then I start opening up these boxes and I find all these unfinished projects and I'm like, ooh, I think I'll finish this one today. This is how it usually winds up happening. I have like 50 million fires and nothing to put them out.
How many items can you display at the shop?
Oh, my booth is let's see, how big is my booth? A 10-foot by 6-foot space, and you'll know my booth when you see it because it is stacked side to side, up and down, and hanging. So yeah, I have a lot. I probably have maybe, I'm guessing probably 200 items in there because I have a lot of little stuff. They're on shelves, and I do the upcycled and vintage. So, and I'm trying to teach myself because that's where I'm having a problem with an artist right now. Is I'll get vintage things and I'll look at it and I'm like, oh, I could remake that into, no. Just sell it the way it is. It's cool just the way it is, leave it alone. And that's where I'm having that personal conflict with myself, because I want to redo everything. It's like you don't have to be able to sell something. That's where I'm fighting. And you can always change it. An artist can always change what you did. So like if you make a blunder, if you make an accent on something, you're like, oh, I'll just stick something else right there. Okay, that covers it up.
So at the sorry, I forgot the name. The place where you sell, do they only do vintage stuff, or
They don't.
Would you be able to go in with like a bunch of prints and like posters and papers?
Oh yeah, there's a guy that has like little tiny. You have monthly booth space, or like a little tiny space. So if they're like something small, like you have cards or something that you've painted or drawn, they'll just charge you for that rack for that month. There's a guy that does that. He does also leather working, and so he has probably a booth this size. He just has a shelf, and he just rents that shelf a month. And I mean, and if it doesn't work for a month, you don't have a contract to stay with them. If it doesn't work for a month or two, then you're out. That's, which is nice. But there's a guy that does like those wax melts with the fragrances. There's another lady that does those tumblers that you see everywhere with t-shirts that you see everywhere. There's a lady that repurposes denim and does like crafty patches and stuff on them, things like that. And there's a lot of other vintage sellers in there too.
Your inspirations, two people that she worked with. So Emily had printmaking with me, which back then, what you guys are doing wasn't taught in a drawing class. We taught printmaking 1 and 2, so it's a separate course. And we didn't offer drawing 2 and 3. I think it was just drawing 1 at the time.
Oh, there's 2.
Was there a drawing 2? And but she studied with Sarah Robbins, who was the department chair back then, an amazing teacher. Sarah went on to work with furniture, and you probably were exposed to some of that back then. And Diane Miller, in her home, she has a big barn window that she saw and she loved it, and they actually, I think, took it out of the barn and she put it up into her ceiling, and it's really quite spectacular. And then there's that whole balance of like seeing the vision for something, which is what the gift you have. People don't pay you directly, they pay at the front. You don't have to be there.
No, you do not have to be there. Nope. Now, if you do the vintage market that's out back when they do it once a month in the summertime, you have to be there because you're running your own booth. And that's like, I think, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, something like that. They'll advertise it on their Facebook page when they do it. Which is kind of a great way to get through stuff. Yeah.
How often do you go and thrift?
Let's see, I get paid every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks. But I try to control myself now because I have so much stuff. It's like I look at it, I'm like, do I really need that? Because I'm starting to get into new stuff now where I'm going to be breaking ceramic dishes and making charms with them. Got some stuff my husband bought me for Christmas that I can sand down the edges and do some sea glass out of broken glass, things like that. So I'm trying to control myself into one mode of this is what I'm going to do now. Don't look at anything else. But yeah, at least probably every other week. Or if I see a garage sale that looks really promising, like the one they always have out here on 15, yeah, I'm like, oh, let's just pull in there and see what they got going on.
Do you have like a certain day of the week that you go that you think the stuff is better, or?
It just depends on your area. Like I was talking about the Community U place in Rochester. They'll post on Facebook, and sometimes they'll have 70 to 80% off of certain tags on certain days. So try to get there early because everybody will be in there elbowing each other, like say yes to the dress type thing. So just certain days I just watch to see when the thrift stores have their sales. But yeah, so sometimes I'll just see one item and that'll send me into a conglomerate of steps 5 miles away from where I started from, just by looking at something.
You dabble in Facebook Marketplace?
I do. I've sold personal stuff in that too, but I hate waiting around for people. I waited for somebody, and I don't know. I'm kind of a newbie at this stuff. I don't know how long you're supposed to wait for somebody before you leave. So I sat there for like a half an hour and Silver Lake waiting for somebody one day, and I'm like, heck with this, I'm done. It's like if I can't ship it to you. Now I do Macari. I've used Macari a lot to sell stuff. And that can just be shipped directly from your house. Put a label and everything, set on it, ready to go. Good questions. There's so many Facebook pages and so many Instagram pages and YouTube and TikToks and everything. Oh, let's upcycle today. Let's do this. Let's do that. This is what I found at the thrift store. Let's see what I can make with it. You know, I mean, it's huge now. And I think it just has to be that way, because if not, then the generations after you are just going to be living in trash.
So how important is like having your own artistic voice? Like, do you say, I'm always going because this is my work, I'm always going to like limit color or texture, I'm going to push pattern, or do you just kind of go with what you feel?
Well, I go with what I feel,
Yeah.
but then as me being a selling artist in a booth where the general public go, you kind of have to tame that one down.
Yeah.
Because I would go wild and crazy if I could with prints and patterns and blah, 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 blah. And I have done that. And then put it out for sale and then it doesn't sell. And I'm like, oh, that was my favorite. Why didn't it sell? Well, because it's screaming, hey, look at me from in the corner. And people don't want, hey, look at me from the corner.
Yeah.
They want toned down. They want something that looks great in their living room. You know, basic colors, things like that. So if like me, I sell at craft shows and things like that. I kind of watch and listen to see what customers are saying as they're shopping around at different booths and things.